linked in that city. The compactness of the city literally responded or indicated that the closeness and the union that they had one with another. In other words, fellowship meant something in the closeness of that city. How close are you to the folk in God's house? What kind of internal union do we have one with another? Am I glad to see my brother when I walk into God's house? Am I full of joy to see my sister when I walk into God's house? Do I feel an overwhelming excitement that grips me to know that that's God's child, that's my sister, that's my brother? What type of camaraderie do we have? David said that Jerusalem was a close city, compacted together. The Lord's church started off that way. Acts chapter 2. They were all together, had all things in common. They met from house to house, praying with singleness and gladness of heart. Wasn't nobody arguing and fussing. Amen. Cutting and cussing. During that time, they started off on the foot of unity because they realized that God had put them together in the same body. You follow me? They were the same, saved by God. And because of that point of relativity, they could relate to one another in a very special way. Fellowship ought to mean something. And the reason why many of us don't really look forward to coming, being with our brothers and sisters in God's house, because fellowship is not what it's supposed to be. When we go around and greet one another, say, I'm glad to see you. I pray you're not doing it out of formality. Pray that you realize that exercise helps us to understand the essence of how God would have his people to be anyway. Because you're not going to go home to live with God if you can't dwell with me peacefully here on earth. You can say, oh, how I love Jesus, till your vocal cords bust into flames. But Jesus is not going to take you with him if you're walking up in here and treating me different from the way that God would have you to treat me. You're supposed to love me like the Lord loved you. That's what enhances the fellowship. That's what causes us to be close-knit as a family of God. When we come to God's house, we come with that single purpose. These are my brothers. These are my sisters. We are the family of God. God put us together. It's up to us to make sure we stay together. David said Jerusalem is built as a city that is compact together. Verse 4, where the tribes go up, all those families came together. The tribes of the Lord unto the testimony of Israel, to give thanks unto the name of the Lord. Jerusalem was the center of the nation's religious existence. All of those tribes would come together on a regular basis to reconfirm their faith and to give God thanks for all that he has done. That's the reason I said worship is a special privilege. Because this is the time that we collectively come together to give God thanks. We don't come here to air out anybody's dirty laundry. We don't come here to run down each other. We don't come here to spy, to scheme, and to underhandedly becut one another and assassinate each other. We come here to lift each other up and to build each other toward the height that God would have us, because we're all in this together. What you go through, I go through. What I go through, we all go through, because God has put us together. And as that family unit, we ought to come to God's house with a singleness of purpose and of mind. David said they have set some thrones of judgment, the thrones of the house of David. Thrones of judgment indicated that righteousness and justice would be the ruling factor in the city. If you had to deal with some shadiness out there, he said you could come up in here and there would be no shade. I might need to explain that.
All right, go ahead.
A little further.
Yeah.
Thrones of judgment, a place where right must prevail. You deal with crookedness, wickedness, and underhandedness in the world. Matter of fact, the Lord warned his disciples. He told them right before he left this earth, marvel not if the world hates you. The world is full of haters. So all they know how to do is hate. Some of the most hateful and low-down folk will ever come across. You'll find them in the world. Which is why John said, don't love the world, neither the things of the world. All that's in the world is the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And this is not of the Father, but it's of the world. That's all the world knows. That's the way it's going to act. That's the way it's going to respond. That's the way they're going to behave. You ought to expect it in the world. When you come up into God's house, there's a throne of judgment that rules in this house that says right must prevail. I may have to deal with a crook out there. I ain't got to deal with a crook in here. I may have to deal with some liars out there. But the benefit of coming into God's house is I ain't going to have to deal with no liars up in here. The thrones of judgment are established. There is a standard by which the people who are privileged to come into God's house must live by. And if they don't, there's a God in heaven who's going to require of them for their misdone deeds. In light of how special this city is and the inhabitants are, David in the Lord's house is going to pray for two very significant things: peace and prosperity. As you look at verse number 6, David says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Do you pray for the peace of the Lord's house?
All right.
In your daily supplications and admonitions and giving of thanks to God, do you ask him to make sure that peace reigns in his house? David said, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Watch this. They shall prosper that love thee. Jesus informed us in the Sermon on the Mount